Hello, everyone. This is the Revolutionary Think Tank podcast. If this is your first time here, this is a podcast about political commentary, a splintering of philosophy, organizing psychology, and revolutionary thinking. My name is 4AS, and this is my co-host, MysterE. So, MysterE, how are you going today?
I am very well, 4IS. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm going pretty good. And of course, we have our other co-host,
Mm-hmm.
Kareem, the AI explorer. Kareem the Dream, how are you going today?
I'm a bit tired to be honest.
It's been
Yeah,
exploring.
all this exploring, all this trying to keep up with all this change, man. It's overwhelming, man. It's mentally fatiguing, you know.
Well, you know what? That's a really good prompt for what we were going to discuss today, because,
Was it
uh,
too obvious?
see, the funny thing is that on a couple of videos ago, actually, it might have been more three or four. Um, we got this rant from somebody who was commenting on our channel that they were like, "Oh, you guys are discussing AI. What is this a right wing psyop of trying to convince people to get involved in AI with the capitalists?" And it just like I was reading that and I thought to myself, is
Luddite.
wanting to implement AI particularly right wing or particularly conservative?
Yeah, is that a
Or
thing? Is that a thing? Because
yeah,
I've heard somebody else say that AI is like supporting AI is a right wing thing or something. Because it's like, I don't know, being a Musk supporter or something like that. Is that true? Is that a thing?
well,
Look, I
yeah,
mean,
go for it, Kareem.
it's obviously driven by capitalist interests, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be beneficial to everyone.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there's plenty of competition that's happening in the space,
Hmm.
and the competition is driven by capitalist interests. There is absolutely no doubt about that, yeah? But just because it's driven by capitalist interests doesn't mean it's not going to be democratically beneficial or useful to, people who don't subscribe to capitalist, beliefs or whatever that may be. You don't need to be a capitalist to benefit from AI,
AI,
right?
yeah, yeah. Because that's the thing. Like, it's just fundamental to capitalism that like technological change is driven by capitalists. So like,
That's but that's
this
like
is not a
calling
new phenomenon. Like, I don't know
but
why people are
that's
struggling with it.
That's like calling electricity like a capitalist
Yeah,
thing, or
exactly. Yes, yes.
it's not. No, electricity doesn't give a shit if you're a capitalist or like.
Yes, it's a good point, but that's why like it's surprising to me that people lump it with a side of the political spectrum, but not unusual if you know enough about like the elitism of the left, which is just
Hmm.
like any type of basically new technology or new I don't know idea can be shifted onto like a reactionary movement, a right wing movement, and then it can be dispelled as like being evil and not to be discussed, which I think is very disappointing because like if you're truly left wing in like the working class sense and you're looking for something that's going to revolutionize society and drag us out of the capitalist mode of production, I don't see anything better than fucking AI.
No,
Like, let's be
I
honest.
agree 100%.
Mm.
Like, if you want real change, you will use all the tools that are available to
Yeah,
you in
yeah,
order to accomplish it.
yeah.
You don't pick and choose these ones as being capitalist and
That's right. Yeah,
non-capitalist. You're like, no, like, how do we get real change? Like,
yeah, yeah. No,
Uh,
I'm across that. Yeah.
yeah, I would say whatever that original comment or that original rant. There's kind of like two parts to it, just to play devil's advocate. The first part of that, to the method of the madness, is how the current framework works is that it's capitalists and those who have the means of production that are pushing this AI systems on us, and they're doing it for their benefit and their self interest. So to oppose that is good. And then the second part of that is in defense of how the system works and to protect, I guess, good jobs and that sort of thing, because there's the risk of AI making redundant certain jobs, etc., etc. To be opposed to that is to be for the worker. So I think there's two
But,
steps. There's two steps of like assumptions.
like, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I might be way off track on this, but to me, that sounds like right-wing thinking because it wants to protect the status quo. Like, to me, it sounds like if you're and it's not that it's not a legitimate fear like job displacements and automation of roles and stuff like that. But if you're in a place where the status quo, where you have a job, you go to work, this is your means of production, this is how you want to live your life, and you're afraid of change to that, like, to me, that sounds more conservative than progressive. Like,
Well, I think
am I way off track on that, or?
No, actually, no. Like, I'll tell you something fascinating that I got reading. And you know who put me onto this? You did for AS. You told me to read Left-Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder by Lenin. And Lenin does something quite interesting in that book. This is post-revolution Russia as well. He's not writing pre-revolution. This is after the revolution. And he calls the union movement reactionary. And I had to double take that. And I was just like, did he just say that, like, and reactionary basically, Kareem, is like pretty much analogous with the right wing because it's like a reaction to a revolutionary change.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to hold back progress, which is progressive, anti-left wing.
Yeah.
And like union movements, while they get gains for the working class and like they increase their working conditions, which lead to better life standards generally, they create this phenomenon that he calls the labor aristocracy. So like you have laborers who then become kind of like entitled and just want to hold on to what they've got and don't want to progress.
Yeah,
and so like this is a reactionary force within capitalism. It's one of the contradictions of the working class, which is like this understanding that if technology progresses to a certain point, it will be the thing that socializes society. So basically revolutionizes it out of capitalism. But the contradiction is with the fact that the word that you used like so perfectly before, Ludditism. Like it's literally, it's a Luddite thinking to be like, no, this technology is going to steal my job, like kind of thing today. And so like, we don't want to support any technological changes because it displaces the working class. But that's one of the main contradictions of capitalism is that the new technology displaces not only the old technology, but the working class itself. And then by displacing the working class, it's undermining its own profits. So like, it's just this downward spiral that capitalism goes through, which is interesting. But yes, it's reactionary, I think.
But I think that's where this fear of change, can really start to come from, because I think, if you're taking that perspective around, is this technology going to take my job? What am I going to do? I'm going to have to change on some level. It forces personal change. Like and what does personal change look like, in this post AI era? It means I might have to I don't want to say improve my capability, although it's probably far truer than it sounds.
If the shoe fits.
But on some level, I got to level up. I'm forced to level up to learn something new, acquire a new skill, find a new way to add value, to be useful, to contribute to society, if I still need to contribute to society in this AI revolution. But the pressure is now on me to adapt, to change. And I think that fear of change is that it comes from potentially this idea that what if I can't keep up? What if I'm not able to make the necessary changes to be able to be useful in this modern era? And that if you guys will allow me to get personal on this one, I had this realization the other day. I get a whole bunch of AI newsletters, and I love reading these things because I'm reading about all the different technologies that are coming out, all the different breakthroughs that are coming out. And I took my eye off the ball for a couple of days. I didn't read newsletters for a couple of days. Yeah. I came back to it and I started reading about all these different breakthroughs that were coming up. And I was thinking about this podcast as well. And I came across 3 things that I'm like, oh, this would be perfect for the podcast. I'd love to talk to you about this. Yeah. And I didn't even click on the articles. I didn't even actually go in and read them. I was just reading the headlines. Yeah. 30 minutes later, I forgot what all 3 of them were. And to me, what that told me is that like I'm someone who lives and breathes like this AI revolution. I'm obviously obsessed with it. I'm obviously an advocate for it, unashamedly. Yeah. But like if someone like me cannot keep up with the pace of change that is occurring at the moment, then what chance in hell does average Joe have of trying to make sense of this new world that we're going to be living in? But let me sorry, I'll go on a bit more of a rant if that's all right.
Yeah, guys.
Like I had another thought like ages ago that it could potentially not even matter in terms of the change, because the direction that technology is headed in at the moment is, if it can't make things easier, then it's not useful. If it can't change your life in a more meaningful way, in ways in which minimize the level of adaptation that you need to make in order to take advantage of this change, then it's not useful. So let me give an example. There's a whole bunch of like no coding platforms out there at the moment. So I use a lot of different software. Yeah. Some of the software is useful. Some of the software is not. Now, there are very steep learning curves for a lot of this software. It might take me hours just to figure out how to use different kinds of software. Like, because there might be something that I realize I got too much data. I'm trying to organize it. I can't wrap my head around all this stuff. I need help. I need some technological solution to this problem. So I'll try something out. I'll go in, I'll have a few cracks at it, and I'll be like, it kind of does what I want, but it's a bit too simple. It doesn't have enough functionality. And then I'll move on to the next piece of software, and I'll see all these different options and all these different buttons and knobs and things that I can tweak. And the manuals are like 100 pages long. I've got to watch 50 YouTube videos just to figure out how to use it. And then I'm like, nah, it's too hard. I give up on it. So it's like neither one of those is useful to me. And the direction that technology is headed in is that there is a perfect balance to be found between how useful it is and how much customization I have over it. So eventually, all this adaptation stuff that I'm going through, that I'm struggling with right now, somebody else is going to figure it out. They'll make money off it too, because I'll pay them they can solve this challenge. But eventually, it's not going to matter, because someone will figure out a way to solve this problem that puts minimal strain on me to adapt.
Can I just interject quickly and float the idea, which we have talked about here I think at length, but like I wouldn't mind inserting it again into the conversation. Is this not where AI agents come in to the picture as well, to kind of help us coordinate a literal minefield of endless AI capabilities and like uses out there, and like the agent should be able to kind of coordinate for us simple humans? Like we say, look, this is what I want, and they're like, the agent will be like, all right, let me just coordinate that with the 50,000 different options that are on display here, and I'll help you get to something, and I'll check back in when I'm ready, kind of thing. Like, isn't that like kind of?
It's not that you're wrong. Like it's you are on the right track. Agents and agentic reasoning and the way that agents work is a little bit more complicated than that. But let's assume you're right for the moment. Which agent do you choose?
Right.
Because there's going to be 50,000 of them.
Yes.
That's a capitalist market.
Yeah.
That's what's coming out there. they're all going to have different capabilities and be
Yeah.
able to affect your lives in different ways.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to be better suited for you than other people. So how do you choose which agent? You're going to have to go through that process of, let me try this agent, let me try that agent. Like there's no way around that process.
Consumer choice.
The better agents will rise to the top of the heap because more people will talk about them. And the not as good agents are just going to fall to the bottom of the scrap heap because they don't get enough attention. They don't get enough.
Which is like, the true intention of a free market system, right?
That's that's how it's meant to work.
You have anarchy in the competition, and the good stuff rises to the top, and the bigger players eat the little fish, and all that sort of stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, we're living really, and I think I really want to acknowledge this, like, with our listeners as well. Like, we are living in an age where this new technology, which is, basically the newest technological revolution, and potentially one of the most important that humanity will ever go through. We are living in an absolute golden age at the moment, where we're talking about the fact that we're struggling with a plethora of options and not knowing even how to coordinate them, even being able to use them properly, because you have to spend so many hours up front getting used to them and all that sort of stuff. But like, this is literally the free market at play here. It's giving you, there's so much competition out there. It's like the wild, wild west in AI. People are developing it faster than you can keep track of it. And like, there's so many things to play with. What the hell do you poke a stick at first? And like, the market's it's kind of got to figure it out. Where's the invisible hand now? Hey?
Right. This is the story that I'm most dying to share with you guys, because I think this happened over the past week or so. Yeah. Like this is capitalism at its finest. Yeah. OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, one of their for a while they've been seen as being so far ahead of the competition that every time someone drops a new model, they've got something ready to go which just one-ups them. So they just drop their latest model and it just shits all over whatever, like came out recently, So that's how they've sort of maintained this reputation that they're that far ahead of the competition. They've always got something ready to go. So what happened in the past week was Google DeepMind released not a version of Gemini, but like an experimental model. Now the place that we're playing here, and I'll expand on this later, but like, and we have talked about it in the past, is these evaluation metrics of the different models. So there's different tests that they run them through. So like how well can it code? How well can it do creative writing tasks? How well can it answer different exam questions? There's a whole bunch of different evaluation metrics. And every time a new model gets dropped, people run it through these evaluation metrics because they want to know how good it is. And I'll talk about how that method's flawed in a bit, but like put a pin in that. But what happened was Google dropped a model and it rose to the top of these rankings in terms of these evaluation metrics. Yeah. So OpenAI predictably dropped a new model, which again rose to the top of the rankings, which is what like they're kind of renowned for doing. Yeah.
Right.
Google then came back and then dropped another, like within a couple of the days. Yeah. A new experimental model, which again rose to the top of the ranking. And the theory behind it is that they dropped a lesser version of their original model to bait OpenAI into actually dropping their model so that they could come back and one-up them again.
That's hilarious.
That's capitalism at its finest.
It is, actually. It is. It is. It is. If you've ever read Das Kapital Volume 1, there is this idea, and Forrest has graciously put it on the slide for us today. It's called the coercive laws of competition. And the coercive laws of competition is exactly what you're talking about here. It is this idea that technology and labor, so like the value that is being produced out of something, so there's no real labor in an LLM, but like it's producing some form of value for people out there. The value that it's producing is measured by what is socially necessary labor time. So like, if the socially necessary way of producing content or responses to an LLM is like ChatGPT or OpenAI's program, and then Google drops one, and this becomes now this new socially, or like the social standard is here, and then they've just raised the bar. They are going to benefit off it while everyone's still down here. And then like somebody else will create a new technology that will surpass the rest, and then they reap all the profits while everyone's still around the socially necessary time band, and then it jumps again and jumps again. So these guys are literally playing with that theory, like, and they're doing it at like rapid fire pace by the sound of it.
But there's a two-tier, there's like, this is happening on two tiers here, and this is one of the features of like what makes the AI paradigm the large language model, or large multimodal model. They're calling them multimodal models these days because you can audio input, you can video input. I'm still calling them large language models, but potato. Like one of the features of it is that from the outset they wanted to make it democratically available to everyone. So each one of these models has a free version available to it. They don't want to deny access to the general public. They don't want to exacerbate inequality. Like they don't. That's how they position themselves as being, I'm missing the word here. What is it? Like democratic. That's how they're positioning themselves as being democratic. If you choose to pay a little bit of extra money, these are all the extra features that you get. This is all the cool stuff the model can do that the base model can't do. But we're not saying you can't have AI if you don't have money. Like, you still get access to it. You just don't get access to the latest stuff. Yeah, that's all.
Can I ask though, like, you made it sound really like, what's the word? Neutral, like in the sense that like they want people to have access to it. Like, do you really think it is that kind of altruistic that they just like, oh no, we should offer the free version because we want everybody to have a turn with our amazing like products kind of thing? Or is it more like that if they don't offer it for free, all of the people will just go to the next model that is free because like a large section of their market is just using this thing to kind of get used to it, muck around with it, play with it, etc. And they're not going to fork out cash for it. So like, to be in the market and like to have people using it, to have that brand recognition, so you're always at the forefront of people's psyche and you're the name on everyone's lips, you actually want to make sure you're offering that for free.
Look, it's an interesting point you raised. This is how I think it actually played out. OpenAI, when they dropped GPT 3.5, that's when it sort of rose to like international fame. That's when it showed up on everyone's radar. Now, they had a free version of that because I honestly believe that their intention was altruistic. That they wanted to. Could it have been a marketing ploy as well? Entirely possible.
No, I'm more saying, is it a survival thing? Like, if they don't offer this for free and their competitors are, then they will pale into insignificance in the background.
But they didn't have any. Well, actually,
now the race is on.
I could be wrong on that. They didn't have any good competitors at the time. Put it that way. Like the models that were freely available weren't on that level. Weren't as useful as that model. Hadn't demonstrated as much value as they did. But like, by adopting that perspective, what it does is it sets the precedent for everyone else in the market. Everyone else in the market is now like, okay, whatever we do, we need to at least have a free model that people can play around with. If we want to survive in this market.
So the market has been set.
We'll find other ways to make money. Like it puts the pressure on them to find other ways to monetize their product. But if they want to survive in the market, they have to have a free version of it that's available. Still doesn't solve this internet access problem, which for IS and I have sort of spoken about in the past. But because if you don't have access to the internet, you don't really have access to AI. And apparently a third of the world doesn't have access to the internet. So that's a big fucking problem. But
that is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't have any good solutions on how to fix that one. Like,
But I guess what we've kind of unpacked just then was, I think what a lot of people like, just to kind of go back to the Luddite notion, or at least the comments about if you're talking about AI, you must be part of a right wing psyop. Like I think the kernel of like fears that are kind of based on those talking points is it seems to be focused on like, oh well, if we don't if we don't remain in this holding pattern, if we don't hold on to what we have, we will lose it, or a certain section of the working force will lose their jobs, etc., etc. Like almost like the coercive laws of competition are a new thing, but the thing is they've always been around, and this is the latest version of the coercive laws of competition. Where the I think where the legitimate fear is okay, if we decide to leave AI and leave these large language models to your Jeff Bezoses, to your Mark Zuckerbergs, and all of that. Sure, the coercive laws of competition, where you know Google are one-upping OpenAI, and OpenAI are one-upping Google, and you basically have a large language model bit off. If we leave it to them to do what they want to do, then sure, there are going to be people that are screwed along the process. But if you actively choose to create a Creative Commons license for these certain things, or you decide to democratize it with your data exhaust, where we actually have a legitimate digital twin that is able to function our behalf, then suddenly you can have decent revolutionary change.
yeah, that's not like I understand the sentiments of where you're coming from. But the real sort of bottleneck that's going to come in terms of the coercive control, and I've touched on this in the past, but it's becoming more and more true, is compute power, basically. So, at one level we've got, and it was explained to me this way in one of the videos that I was watching, was that at a base level we've got the chipsets, the basic processing units of these AI models, which is made by like Nvidia. Nvidia is at the top of the game at the moment. Their back orders are a year. It takes 12 months back order to order chips. One of the headlines I read, not the news article, was that there are three major whales, anonymous, that have spent 10 billion recently on acquiring Nvidia chips. So they make these GPUs that are specifically designed for training these AI models. They put them together in these superclusters, and these superclusters, these raw computing power stations, these data centers, are what these AI models need to get trained on. So at the moment, the best models are taking months to get trained. Yeah. And it's probably a good time to talk about the scaling laws, which I've come to understand a little bit recently. What they figured out with the large language models is that they respond really well to scaling laws. They've been debating it recently, but let me explain what it is. The more data you feed into a model, the better it performs. The more time you spend training the model, the better it performs.
Yeah.
The more, and this is a recent one that popped up, the more time that you give to a model to think about an answer that it's going to give you, the better it performs. And when I say the better it performs, I mean the better it performs against all these different evaluation metrics that I've been talking about in the past. So they call these the scaling laws, and what it boils down to is bigger is better. So that's what's led to this kind of arms race, this almost Cold War, in terms of, okay, if bigger is better, how do we get as big as possible, as quickly as possible, by buying as many of these chips as we possibly can. So the chips is where it starts. The frontier models are what gets built on top of those chips. And when I say frontier models, I'm talking about OpenAI, I'm talking about Anthropic's Claude, I'm talking about Gemini, I'm talking about the people that are sort of leading the charge in terms of like building these AI models. Now, on top of those models, like they open up their APIs, which means, you know, if you want to build software that's built on top of our model, then you're free to go ahead and do that. We'll charge you per token. So they still make money off that. And there's like million, that could be an exaggeration. It might not be though. Like different types of software that are built on top of these AI models. So we're looking at competition on 3 different levels here. The AI chipsets, the frontier models themselves, and then the software that gets built on top of those frontier models. So like it's competition is happening on so many different levels there. Like
this is it for AS. This is the he or she, sorry, I should say, controls the means of production. Controls the world. This is what we've been talking about. AI is if this is the forerunner of the technological revolution of our age, of the 21st century, then it is definitely he or she who controls the AI. These means of production will control the world for the next 100 years or more, unpredictably, obviously, but like, you know, for the definite foreseeable future.
The one thing that's really important for me to mention, though, is that there's been talk within the AI community recently that there's been a slowing down of the improvements that we're seeing in AI models relative to the scaling laws. So have you guys heard of Moore's law in computing? Like miniaturization, doubling of computing power, stuff like that.
But run through us again, though. So,
but I dropped the term and I don't fully understand it myself. But Moore's law is this idea that you know the rate of computing power is progressing at a standardized pace. So like every year or two, like chips get smaller by a certain size, memory
computing capacity
by a certain size, processing speed increases by a certain size, and it's all relative, and it's all happening at a predictable pace. Yeah,
it's every 2 years. Apparently, it's supposed to be that the chips themselves increase in computational power every 2 years. They double.
But my understanding of Moore's law is that I think they're down to like 2 nanometers in terms of like the basic functional unit of the chip, and there's a limit to Moore's law.
But like, see, that limitation, from what I understand, sorry to cut you off, is based on like the technology itself. Like, they use these like crystalline, some type of like technology to cut like microchips and slice like silicon and all this sort of stuff at such a minute, like almost atomic level. And so like where the technology is at for the cutting, so the means of production, Boreas, like the literal technology in terms of how you cut the chips themselves, is at a limit. So like if the technology itself for slicing this stuff wasn't a limitation, it wouldn't be a limitation on the chips. So like Moore's laws could hold true if it wasn't for the technology in slicing microchips, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Unless a new technology rocks up, which I heard about another headline that I just read, an article that I didn't actually read. I'm getting that many newsletters, man. Forgive me, but they were talking about these photon powered chips that might not. Were they coming out of Taiwan and China? I can't remember, but it operated on a different technology, which apparently doesn't fit into that traditional paradigm and may be able to supersede it. Quantum computing, same deal. We're talking about particles operating on a subatomic level, like like these new technologies
will unlock this,
but they don't necessarily fit into Moore's law anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like we're talking about completely new paradigms, but the AI scaling laws that I've been talking about that have been holding true for some time, where there was a recent comment by Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis, was that the performance gains that we're getting out of bigger is better is slowing down, and it's starting not to be as impressive as it originally was. Elon Musk, at the moment, my understanding is he's the one who's gone gung ho in terms of pouring all his money into building these massive superclusters. Their model Grok 2, I think, is what they're up to at the moment. Not performing as well as the other models, but it's only a matter of time before they start training models really, really quickly. They get really, really good.
I heard this really, really interesting story about AI and its limitations in the physical world as opposed to its limitations in terms of what it can do as a model, let's say. And so from my understanding of how all of this works is that the microchips that go into computers and stuff like that developed up to a certain point, and Moore's laws might have held true, but they started cutting back on the need for higher and higher computational power, because the industry out there, business sector, commerce, finance, they didn't need up to a certain point, they didn't need super microchips, right? Just to do their usual business functions. And so this is fucking incredible. And I love that it was this section of our population that did this, because everyone always writes them off as this lazy, unproductive class in society. But if it wasn't for gamers, we wouldn't have the technology that is required now to power the AI revolution.
The
GPUs that go into the graphics cards that feed the most complex gaming systems out there.
Completely by accident, this piece of hardware wound up being the most perfect way to train AI neural. They made some adaptations to it.
They have. But essentially, this is the technology that was being pushed to its absolute fucking limits because of the voracious gaming community on the international level.
I love that you said that.
I think it's an architecting term, but I completely forget what it's called. But it's it's you, for example, cutting a corner in a curve. So you specifically do it for, say, anyone that's disabled, needs wheelchair access and that sort of thing on a corner curve. That is obviously great for that person that has a disability, but it's also really good because it benefits, say, for example, a bike rider. Say, for example, you have a family that has a pram. They can use exactly the same access point in that sort of town planning. So, I know it's an architectural term, but I think that's what you're talking about with what happened with the GPU.
Yeah. And it's really incredible because like I said, 10 years ago or whatever it was, they kind of started curling back, and the industries that were usually asking for more computational power, they wanted more advanced microchips, like phones, like new laptop technologies, like all this sort of stuff. They started just scaling back, and they were like, look, we don't really need to push this any further. But if it wasn't for gamers. Now, the interesting thing though is because now the AI is really pushing the limits of what microchips can do, it is now the AI that is at the forefront pushing the absolute boundaries of the need for newer and newer microchips. Now, what I've heard recently is that like before they were just getting conglomerations, like clusters of these microchips that usually go into the most high-end gaming computers and all that sort of stuff, and they put them like thousands and thousands of them in a room, and like like the biggest problem they have is like cooling that thing because it's just going to burst into flames at any point. But like now what they're doing, and these microchips are quite small, but you put thousands and thousands of them together, but like what they're starting to develop now, and there's this company called TSMC or TCMS. It's a company that operates and like basically does all the high-end microchips in Taiwan. They put it all together, but there's another company, a Dutch company. So they over in Holland, they are the forefront in the world. Like they are the most cutting edge in microchip design. They're the ones that have figured out like slicing microchips at like under 7 nanometers, I think, which is like the forefront of like microchip technology. If you can get under 7 nanometers, you can make these super microchips. And like the AI companies are now like, you know, the thing that you were talking about before with the $10 billion that these three anonymous companies have like bet on like trying to get these new microchips. These microchips are now like before they were like on graphics cards and stuff like that. So, you know, like they're this big, they fit in your computer or whatever. These microchips they're working on are the size of dinner plates now. So they're each of them are about this size, and they put them into a cluster somewhere, and those things are going to power the next generation of AI models. This is the thinking anyway behind it.
Let me just as much as I'm enjoying talking about the technical aspects of it, in terms of what this means for change, like again, and I told you this would probably bring out the capitalist in me in this conversation, was that if we didn't have these things, if we didn't have the competition in the marketplace, if we didn't have these driving forces behind why we need smaller and smaller chips or bigger and bigger computing centers, we wouldn't have the capabilities that we have today. Like I don't see these things. And I'm happy for you guys to debate me on this, but I just don't see these things emerging organically out of anything other than the profit motive.
It's a driver. And like I think we've talked about this like a couple of times, just us individually as well. And like it is a driver. Like there is no denying. And if any socialist, communist, revolutionary wants to tell you that like capitalism isn't a productive force that is unrivaled in terms of anything that the human race has ever seen, then they're just lying to you, or they don't understand how economics works or how like history works. So like, yes, the productive force of capitalism based on the coercive laws of competition that we have been describing today is a massive factor. There's no denying that. But the coercive laws of competition are one driving factor in many of these things. And like competition can work outside of the coercive laws of competition. I think it'll be good to define what coercive laws of competition are, just to paint a picture, because like this is a very specific use and terminology in Marx's kind of analysis of capitalism. So the coercive laws of competition are specifically when you have a whole bunch of capitalists. Let's use the AI industry because it's pertinent. You have like 10 of the top AI large language model companies working on producing the best product for the market kind of thing. All 10 of them are working and they're all around the same level. But then there's one, so OpenAI, that changes the game and revolutionizes the technology somehow. It makes it more productive and more efficient than ever before. All the other 9 are still on this one level, but they're number 10 now, OpenAI is standing above them, and it's going to reap more profits because it's figured out the edge on the rest of the competition. Now, that doesn't stay like that. All of the others will either reverse engineer or eventually figure out what OpenAI has done to match them or surpass them. And so every time that this happens, there is like a change in the market. So this is a coercive law because they're competing with each other to outdo one another. And every time one of these steps is gained, usually, not always, the person that makes the gains and then starts sucking in all the profit because they can do it better than everybody else, so they get more of the share of the profit in that industry, they will cannibalize one of the lower players. And so you have potentially less players on the market, which is a factor that we were talking about before. At the moment, there's 50,000 AI models out there that can do something for you. Kareem, you just want life to be simple so you can pick the best one. But the market has to tell you which one is the best one through the laws of coercive competition. Eventually, though, this style of competition leads to monopolies. It leads to groups or duopolies. It leads to groups of massive players and everybody else who can no longer compete with them. At that point, it is no longer efficient anymore. It's just based on whoever's got the most capital will be the most efficient. And so the coercive laws of competition contradict themselves and start acting as a fetter on the development of that technology. So at a certain point, and this is why I described it as the golden age before, we are at the golden age at the moment where these bastards, they're out there, they're really trying their hardest and they're trying to kill each other in the process. And who's benefiting from that? Humanity, potentially. Yeah. But once we surpass the golden age, and if we get into monopolistic levels of coercive competition, look out. Because they might not make decisions anymore based on anything more than just profit. At the moment, though, there's those competition drivers. That competition driver is pushing the market to its absolute limit, which benefits us all. But at a certain point, the coercive laws of competition become something that potentially holds humanity back, which is an issue. That's the long range kind of look at this type of problem.
So, two directions I want to go in this. Firstly, I'm a huge believer in consumer competition laws, like regulation of the marketplace. This is where I think governments really need to step up in terms of making sure that monopolies, duopolies, this sort of stuff doesn't happen. That's the responsibility that I see of governments in terms of protecting the marketplace. The second direction I want to go in is it is actually really, really hard to stay on top wherever you are in any industry, in any paradigm in life. And the place that I want to go with this is sports. When it comes to sports, when you win a championship or when you become a champion in any sport, it is incredibly difficult to remain a champion at the top of your game, because the people that are in competition with you are constantly trying to get to that upper echelon, are constantly trying to get to the top. And there seems to be it's generally acknowledged that it's harder to remain a champion than it is to become a champion.
Yeah.
So
can I just not to undermine what you're saying, but there is the reason that analogy is not rock solid in my thinking is that sports analogies work on the limitations inherent in the human body. So unless we're talking about potentially merging humans with, I don't know, technology or something to produce better results, let's just say hypothetically we're not, and we're just talking about humans here. Yes, humans have, depending on your sport, let's just say you hit your peak in your mid-20s and you might last until your early 30s, and then you're out. You're no longer able to be a champion in your field anymore in a sporting sense. But when we're talking about massive companies, groups or organizations that are funded or get their power from the capital investment that is behind them. Once you have these companies that become monopolistic and become transnational and no longer are subjected to the regulation within one country, but go cross borders so they can do whatever the hell they want, anywhere in the globe, the regulation doesn't work anymore. And whoever's got the most billions or the most trillions now we're heading towards will be the biggest fish out there, and they'll set the rules of the game.
Let me push back. Let me push back on this one because what you're describing in individual sports, 100% correct. Yeah, in team sports, you're still reliant on the organization of individuals, the team chemistry between them, their ability to communicate with each other, their ability to develop new game plans, new strategies, adapt, evolve as a group. The intellectual prowess that they bring to the game is still under scrutiny and is still necessary in order to perform at the highest levels. And the reason why that analogy maps onto organizations is because organizations change in the same sorts of ways as well. Like an organization that's functioning at its peak. Like, for example, there's been a lot of talk about, employees leaving OpenAI.
Yeah.
Like they're losing a lot of their top talent because apparently there might be, questions around ethics. There might be questions around, different directions. Like, again, it's the same sort of analogy of, do the people in the organization actually get along with each other?
Yeah.
Are the teams actually able to function together, or do they rest on their laurels? Do they feel comfortable where they're at? Like that sort of mentality around, we're at the top, we're staying here, can breed complacency, whether it be in team sports or whether it be in organizations. So I still think that the analogy actually like itself plays out. But you're 100% right. Individual sports, like there are limitations on the human body, and I take that point 100%. But this is where sort of change as a whole is hard. Change on humans, whether it's forced upon us, whether we want it, whether we're pursuing it for the right reasons, like change is just hard. So, I facetiously said at the start of this conversation, I'm tired of keeping up with this pace of change, but the truth is, man, I actually am tired of keeping up with the pace of this change. Like,
Yeah. Well, like that's what I said before. We're in a golden era, and like it's not a bad thing. Like in that sense, if we're in the right wave or section of the curve, for the like whatever section, whatever part of the competition wave we're on, then it's a good thing for humanity. But at one point, it does act as a problem. And let me just develop the analogy then with a sporting organization as opposed to an individual a little bit more for you then. Let's have a look at like the English Premier League. Okay. So if you know much about like the English Premier League, which I don't, but I know this much, that it is one of the most profitable sporting enterprises on planet Earth. And so if you are the team that has the most money behind you, you field the best team. It's got bugger all to do with how well your team players get along and how they're organized. It's got fractional amounts to do with how well they're coached. What I can tell you, the determining factor in these teams is unequivocally is how much capital is behind that team so they can get the biggest stars on the face of planet Earth to play in that club. Now, other teams or other sporting organizations or groupings have tried to kind of undercut that issue in sports, and they put salary caps on. And so like you do have caps on how much money your club can invest in their players to make the competition a little bit more competition-y, if that makes sense. So like there is ways in the sporting world that they've done this. And that goes back to the regulation that you were talking about before, the consumer competition laws, the general regulation of like business practices and making sure they're not up to anything nefarious. But like I said before, once these companies go transnational or international, like good luck trying to ensure that a competitive environment and organizational limitations are the things that are going to regulate an entire industry.
Just to kind of put in facts to kind of support your analogy of the English Premier League, though, MysterE, I can tell you from my 20s when I used to watch it quite consistently, just how depressing it is if you're not part of basically what they consider the top six sides. So, your Everton, your Liverpools, your Arsenals, your Manchester Uniteds, et cetera, et cetera. You're basically... number 7 downwards number 7 is referred to as the best of the rest. So like you get a participation award of being the best of the rest because you're not part of this exclusive club that have all the rich and money in there. And it's also the reason why everyone absolutely lost their minds in 2016 when Leicester City won the league, because they're like, oh my God, somebody outside of the top 6 actually won the league. And this like Claudio, I forget his last name, but like the coach that was part of them is like, oh, this guy's an absolute genius, because like he actually put together a team that they all like.
So that's what you were talking about, Kareem. So it does exist, the phenomenon you're talking about, where you have a good organization and you have good people and they just gel. They just come together and they're absolute fire and they beat the best capital investment on planet Earth. It can happen. Yeah. I'm just talking more, I guess, generally, though. Yeah.
But yeah, like that, I was just reinforcing your points that like, because like, if you have something like the NRL, which is salary capped, and like you lose all your points if you do the wrong thing, that can be a lot fairer. Though, to be completely honest, the Penrith Panthers have absolutely been smashing it over like what the last 4 or 5 years. Okay, so that analogy is kind of thrown out the window in the last 4 years. But if you compare it to the English Premier League, that is full of capital, and like, you know, you spend millions and millions of pounds sterling on your biggest buys if you're part of Arsenal or Manchester United, and you're legitimately actually, that's the flip side of this as well, is that if you're not in the top 6 and you're part of those top 6 teams, like if you're the owner or you're the manager, like you pretty much get embarrassed, and like that's grounds for you to get sacked.
Yeah, if you don't stay in the top.
So like that's the flip side of that.
And that's where the monopoly kind of analogy comes in, and it sucks that there are people that kind of expect to dominate fields just because of the resources that they can kind of muster behind them, as opposed to like their actual technical capabilities and their skill sets and things like that. But it's an unfortunate reality of this system.
This is where I think AI is actually going to lead to revolutionary change, because it's no longer about how much resources you have. Like there's still going to be your Elon Musks and your people that sort of are dominating in that AI space, but for the rest of the world and all the other industries in which AI could potentially affect. And because AI is a general purpose technology, like I mentioned this, you know, I compared it to electricity earlier, but in the same way that electricity affects so many different industries, AI is going to affect so many different industries. And what's going to determine who rises to the top of the heap in these other industries isn't how much resources you have. It's going to be, going forward, how well can you use AI? How well can you leverage the power of AI and integrate it with your existing systems? How well can your personnel learn to fill in the gaps in their skill set, learn to hybridize their teams? How well can the leaders actually adapt to integrating technology into their organizations? How well are they able to adapt to change in general? Because the people that are better at adapting to change are going to rise to the top of the heap. And the ones who still think, yeah, I got all the money, I got all the power, I'm going to be sweet. Yeah, it's not going to work like that anymore. Yeah, like, I mean, in fairness, there'll be a new class of people who acquire all the money and power and resources.
Well, that's why me and Farias are consistently concerned about this idea of like the owners of the means of production. So like this historical materialism trope that I've mentioned a number of times, but it basically goes along the lines of throughout human history, there have been those that kind of control, like, you know, the stuff that everybody uses to make all of the values. So like, you know, in feudal times, it was the feudal lords, they controlled all the land. that the peasants worked on and fed everyone. But because they controlled the land, they were able to control society, kind of thing. But like at the end of the day, you know, it was the peasants that did all the work and fed everyone. So really, were they the most important class? Yeah, probably. But like they didn't own anything, so like who cares? They were at the bottom of the pile. So like I really do think if you look at this from a historical materialist perspective, the most important question will be in a world that we are now describing where like AI seems to be the great equalizer. If we don't allow it to be an equalizer because it's still held back by private property, that would just be, in my mind, such an anti-climax. Like, I would be so disappointed that if, like, we invented the Holy Grail here that was going to basically liberate large sections of humanity and had the power to be used as, like you've said before, where like it's now not about who controls the technology as much as who knows how to use it the best will rise to the top, which would be a very liberating force in human history, like an actual meritocracy, not the stuff that we were promised, like kind of thing at like, you know, at the birth of liberal society where they're just like, yeah, everyone's equal now. And you're like, yeah, sure we are, buddy. But like, yeah, if we actually had meritocracy thanks to technology, because AI, like everybody has access to some AI system that's so powerful.
At least some basic form of AI, yeah?
Yeah. And like if you come up with a good idea and you can develop it with your little AI pal, you could be basically, you know, the trendsetter in an entire industry or field, like kind of thing. Like that type of force would be truly liberating for so many people in society. Like absolutely, like liberating. But like, are they going to hold it as private property? Like, I'm really like, look at the way that OpenAI is already treating the game as you described it before. They're like, it's like they're playing with the iPhone, like what Apple does, where they're just like,
they are actually working on something, by the way.
Yeah, see, like, yeah, but like, you know what Apple does with the iPhone? How they're just like, I don't know, what are they up to now? Like 16? They've got 16 released, but they've really got like iPhone 20. And they've got like 5 years of iPhones backed up and they just release them out whenever they feel like. But the technology's over there, but they're only releasing it to the public over here. And OpenAI is doing the same thing. They're just like,
like how hard it is to stay on top, because OpenAI for a long time was recognized as being so far ahead of the pack in terms of the technology they were capable of producing. Even that's debatable now. And the talent that produces that technology is mobile. They can go elsewhere. Like some of those guys are going over to Anthropic, like to work on Claude. Like you can't promise that the organizations that produce this stuff, like Apple. I heard Apple release a statement saying they were 5 years behind in terms of their AI. Like Amazon. Apparently Amazon's funding Anthropic now in terms of their data centers because they want to make sure that they can keep up with OpenAI. So like this is, to me, this is how capitalism is supposed to work.
It is. That is exactly how it is supposed to work. Yes. So that's how it's supposed to work.
As long as like I don't see us like there's that many. I feel like there's enough players in the game to make things interesting. I don't see, like OpenAI could have run away with it for a little bit, but then everyone else caught up really quickly.
But if they're still a step ahead and they're withholding technology, that concerns me. That's all I'm saying. If they've got a couple of reserves, I am very concerned about that. This is exactly what they do when they're at the top. They sit on technology that could be beneficial to everyone. Like with the latest one, like is it 01?
So 01,
like they haven't released that to the public yet.
Yeah, 01 is still in preview mode. They haven't even released 01. But look, this is where it gets tricky because and to the legitimate fears of AI, like if you release a model early and you haven't fully validated it, you haven't fully explored all the safety concerns around it, that could be a problem. Like that's where AI starts to get potentially dangerous. You know, you do have to go through the proper steps of making sure the technology is actually safe for release. Even if you are 10 steps ahead of the competition, that's where the ethics of it actually comes into it. If you're just focused on getting to market first, rapidly iterating as quickly as possible, you could potentially endanger society. Like that's a valid concern, you know?
It is a valid concern. It is. But like I would really question as to how much of their technology is ready to go. It's just not being released as opposed to it being released for actual ethical reasons. I would just question that. Call me pessimistic, but I just don't trust myself for capitalist these days. Call me pessimistic. That's why I founded the Revolutionary Think Tank podcast with my mate 4IS over here.
But it's
credit. I mean, you've impacted on me. You've definitely made me skeptical of the profit motive. I still must be a capitalist at heart.
Hey.
But you've changed my life. Thanks. You know?
It's all right. It's what we do here.
But it's not just companies that are making strides, though. I remember, Kareem, you were saying before we started the podcast that quantum computing with the Australian government, they're doing their own research in terms of that. Like, can you tell us more about that? Because that sounded fascinating.
Man, I don't remember if you remember correctly, I also said I wasn't smart enough to actually understand what the advancement was. Again, this was another one of those headlines that I read, and I didn't actually click on the article. Because honestly, I'm getting absolutely flooded with information, and I feel stupid, and I feel disingenuous, raising points, like talking about headlines for articles that I haven't read. Which is why I haven't sort of mentioned it. But like what I did was I jumped on the Chief Science Officer of Australia's website, and look, I'll talk about how I wound up there.
Okay.
I came across an article. This one I actually did click on, by the way.
Good.
It was talking about how we can now do a 2-hour interview with someone, ask them a series of questions, and then build an AI replica or a digital twin, which will respond to questions in the same way that they did. So it performs like not procedural tasks. It performs like on personality tests. It performs morally. Right. It performs like these features, these human features, in the same way that the original humans would have. So
how accurate are those models?
85%, with 85% accuracy. Yeah, breakthrough stuff. Now, my idea was, and I'm happy to just throw it out there, if we can take these digital twins, we now like there's another paradigm operating where they're taking these AI agents and they're placing them into these artificial worlds, these AI built worlds. And I believe they're using Minecraft for this, which is actually quite amazing. It goes back to your gaming hypothesis here.
Yeah, the gamers.
AI agents, they put them in Minecraft and they see how they interact with each other. And the way these guys have interacted with each other is absolutely incredible. These guys built societies by themselves. They created laws by themselves.
So the agents did this?
With agents.
Wow.
They created taxes by themselves. They changed laws when the laws stopped working for them.
Anarchy. That's anarchy for IS. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
That's anarchy.
By themselves. Yeah, we didn't tell them how to do this. Yeah, like they figured it out by themselves. So my idea was, hang on, if we can build AI replicas of ourselves, put them in these artificial worlds, we can simulate interactions between us without actually having to interact between us. So if I'm an asshole and there's someone else who's actually nice, and I've got digital replicas, like of both of us, I can simulate that, hey, maybe it's not a good idea for me to be around this person because we're just going to get into conflict. Yeah? Maybe we're not a compatible match. Now, if I'm trying to figure out who to live with, if I'm trying to figure out who to date, what organization I should work for, what sort of team I should be a part of, and I've got digital replicas of all of those things, then all of a sudden we can simulate how well I'm going to get along in those environments. Now,
Kareem, you pretty much just described a specific Black Mirror episode, if I'm not
I
mistaken. I think there's a specific episode. I forget what it's called.
haven't watched
But
it.
but like, I'm pretty sure there's an episode where you get introduced to, like, basically a guy and a girl that go on a first date, and they're kind of interacting, and then they realize they can't like leave the retreat that they're on, and then eventually they kind of both decide to get together to kind of escape this dystopian retreat that they're part of, and then they successfully escape together, and then right at the end of the episode you realize that they are agents within an algorithm, and it's this person specifically using an app to see whether they're compatible with the chick that's on the other side. Well, sorry, the person that they're actually like going to go on a date, and then they find out that they have like 100% accuracy. It's like, okay, great, I'll date with this person because I'm 100% accurate, because there was a simulation that they wanted to escape like this dystopian like park of whether they're compatible or not, that they had the simulation that they were willing to like climb over this massive wall together, and like they were compatible in that way that like basically what you just described was in that
Sounds
Black
awesome.
Mirror
I'm going to go
episode.
back and watch that episode.
Yeah.
So how I wound up going on to the quantum computing thing was, I explored all of this with Claude, like I do with all my ideas. I'm like, hey Claude, is this a good idea? Should we do it or not? Like, and it's like, yes, it's a very good idea.
Are we doing this, Claude? We're doing this. We're doing this.
I said, I'm like, what should I do with this idea? And it's like, you should email the chief science officer of Australia. And I'm like, okay. So I jumped on the chief science officer's website, and I saw that one of the two main priorities of the chief science officer of Australia was quantum computing, and open source knowledge. So making like scientific knowledge available to the general public, because there's a lot of this stuff belongs behind paywalls. So journals will like, if you want to read a scientific article, unless you've got access to a university library, which is how most people do it, or you jump on I shouldn't say this, but Sci-Hub. Sci-Hub is like Pirate Bay for science.
Yay!
Right.
Thank you, Kareem.
But that's open source knowledge was one of the other priorities. But it turns out, and I can't even remember what the headline was. Like, this is what I'm talking about. I can't even remember what the headline was for a breakthrough that Australians made in quantum computing. I think it had something to do with error correction, which is like one of the biggest hurdles. But I'm not smart enough to actually understand exactly what the breakthrough was or how significant it is. But I really feel like it's I asked Claude, okay, hey, if you run these simulations through quantum computing, how much does this, what sort of impact does this have on Australia? Like let's say if this social matching system, this social optimization system, where we chose the perfect flatmate, we chose the perfect job, the perfect team, the perfect leader, based on simulations from these AI replicas, what's that actually worth to the Australian economy? Now, sometimes Claude blows these things out of proportion. Sometimes it exaggerates it. Sometimes it so it hallucinates. But the figure that it gave me was $1.39 trillion annually, 88% increase in GDP.
Why not? Eh?
So I'm like, Let me type this message to you. Please drop off his foot.
And this is the one based on simulating kind of potential relationships
Yeah.
and stuff like that between
simulating
people.
everything, basically. No, because on top of that, I wanted to introduce advanced psychological construct measurement. So at the moment, psychological constructs are measured in terms of scales that you fill in, where you either strongly agree with something, you know those 5-point Likert scales, those things that you have to add up. The reason why we have to do that is because there's a scoring system attached to it, and that scoring system gives us a number at the end of the day. And those numbers we use for complex statistical analyses that tell us which group outperforms which other group. You can't really do that with words at the moment. But if you've ever filled in one of these scales, like how many times have you ever read the question and it gives you 5 options and you're like, you know what? Like it doesn't quite work out that way for me. This question is missing the nuance in my experience. Like I feel like I have something else to add to this question.
Yeah.
You know? So my idea was, what if we use large language models to be able to give you what if we use the same questions but let you answer whatever way you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we used AI to build these complex statistical models based on your text-based answers to these questions. So if we can start to quantify qualitative inputs, then we can get a much greater degree of specificity in the constructs that we're trying to measure. Now, if those constructs were measured by, let's say, a voice interaction with a large language model, in which it asks a predetermined set of questions, you answer whatever way you want. It measures intonations in your voice, and if you want, maybe it switches on the video camera, and you stare into the video camera and it measures your facial expressions, and it reads into exactly everything that you're doing, and it interprets on a basic level a detailed, deep psychological understanding of what is going on for you. And we build your replicas based on that. We build your digital twins based on that data. The simulations become much more advanced. And we run those simulations through quantum algorithms based on these artificial worlds.
Yeah.
Then maybe that $1.39 trillion isn't so far off. You
know what? Have you guys seen Blade Runner?
Yeah.
I just finished reading Android's Dream of Electric Sheep.
Ah, okay. I haven't read it. I've just seen the 2 movies, but
It's been ages since I saw the movie Blade Runner.
They do this thing. I don't know if it's in the book. I'm assuming it would be, but they do the void comp test on the
empathy test. Yeah.
Yes, on the robots, on the replicants, and they're basically testing to see if they have like human responses and reactions, like to certain emotive questions, and they check their iris and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if they're monitoring any other vitals or anything like that. I can't remember. I just remember all the footage of the iris expanding and contracting and stuff based on different types of trigger point questions. So like I'm imagining this type of scenario that you're discussing here, where you have someone hooked up to some type of monitoring system, they're being asked some personal questions potentially, or something that might really trigger some type of emotive response in them, then they get measured basically on that. And like
there are so many different ways to measure these psychological constructs, but the way that you'd have to actually build the system is you'd have to take the questions that the ways that we're already measuring it, adapt those into open-ended questions. So instead of saying how strongly, like rate your level of agreement with this statement from strongly agree to strongly disagree, we'd have to change those questions into open-ended questions, because that way we can take the research that's already been done and we can see, does it match up with these statistical analysis that are being done on
and that seems to be the kind of, I don't know if I'm overselling this or not, but like it seems to be in the world of statistics and analytics anyway, that seems to be the final frontier, which is structured versus unstructured data. So you got quantitative data, you can get your hands on that until the cows come home. It's out there, it's abundant, you can basically get that. But unstructured data, stuff that is qualitative almost, is like the final barrier, because like how do you get qualitative data in a test environment to be able to compare it and correlate it with other results? But like if AI, with its super intelligence, its computational power, et cetera, is able to quantify that which is qualitative in a meaningful way that spits out some type of result or comparison against things that are just so voluminous that would be unfathomable to the human mind. Like, you know, the sky's the limit there, breaking down the qualitative barrier.
We've got supervised learning, which is based on label data, where we say this is here are the labels for the data. This is what we're trying to get you to predict. And then we've got unsupervised learning, which is where we just give you a whole bunch of data and we're like, can you just look for any patterns in it?
Yeah.
Recently, what's emerged is called semi-supervised learning. Okay. Now, I'm bumping up against the limitations of my understanding with this one as well. But semi-supervised learning is like a combination of the two. So we kind of know what we're looking for, but we're still giving you some freedom to find whatever you find in the data. And my understanding is that one of the breakthroughs, like in terms of the large language models, has been the application of semi-supervised learning in addition to reinforcement learning with human feedback, which is used to fine-tune the model. So it's like this stuff is out there. It is happening. I don't know how many psychologists are actually taking interest in this stuff. Because most psychologists just want to work with people. Like, they don't really want to work with machines.
Humans.
I don't blame them. It's like, but I just want to help people, man. What's all this AI stuff?
I want to help people use machines.
Yeah, like cultural. Let's do some coaching, or let's do some cultural change, or it's like, and then they see me come along, and they're like, "What are you doing with AI? Would you rather work with AI than with humans? Why'd you become a psychologist?" And I'm like, man, I don't know what the hell I'm doing with my life. So that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Keep exploring.
But yeah, like once we're like, I just see myself sitting at the intersection of psychology and AI, not knowing enough about either of them to be useful.
I see myself, the more I delve into this, sitting at the intersection between social revolution and AI. Like, I honestly believe, like, with, again, my historical materialist hat on, we from the 20th century onwards, there was kind of this displacement in social revolutionary theory that basically undermined the technological side of the mode of production, and all the focus was on the social relations. So that means all the focus was on how you politically organize society, as opposed to how society is affected by the technology that is available or at human disposal to bring on a new society. And so, like, I think the 20th century, if we can learn anything from the experiments of revolutions in the 20th century, is that we put way too much focus on the politics and didn't look at the ability that was available to us with the technology at hand. And if we leveraged the technology better, it would be unquestionable whether or not we should change the way that the society itself operates to match the technologies and its capabilities. And like, that was already going to be a task anyway, until you started considering the potential of AI. And if the potential of AI is to help us manage and organize ourselves, administer ourselves as populations better because it has access to data and it can process data now in ways that like humans could just never do. Even as a large group working for 1,000 years, we'd never be able to do a fraction of what an AI can do at certain tasks and stuff like that. Like we wouldn't even really have to think too much about the politics. We just have to make decisions collectively about whether we want to go in this direction or that direction with stuff.
Oh man, you remember how we were talking about stories before, and like the power of stories just before it. For the listeners, I shared a story with MysterE around. What was the story about again?
It was about surpassing post-scarcity society.
Yeah, a post-scarcity society where people created simulations where you could act like a god if you wanted to. You could do whatever the hell you wanted to in this simulation. And then eventually people figured out, you know what, like I'm kind of getting sick of it. I'm getting bored of it. I don't actually want all these powers. I'd rather have connection. And
it was incredible.
That story, in terms of framing, framing, not framing, but I guess helping envision a future of a post-scarcity, world. Post-scarcity economics was quite powerful. That's the story you're sharing with me, MysterE. Remind me to share another story with you, because one of the suggestions that Claude came up with for me, I asked it, to start writing stories about. I want to hear about first time in the history of humanity moments. Like these breakthrough moments, with technology. And it came up with a story, you're going to love this one, about the first time AI got elected into office.
Well, we've covered this.
Yeah, but I didn't share the story with you, but
Yeah.
Like, let me share the story. I'll put it on the Discord server. Plug the Discord server, why don't you?
We should, actually. I think we have done that last week, but we'll do it again. Yeah, and I put the link in as well.
Yeah. I'll and if you want, man, put a channel and I'll share some stories on that channel.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And just just paint some visions of
I think it's really I'm glad you brought up that story, because the thing that got me when it comes to this AI developed story was like there's always this kind of this banter, I guess, between conservatives and progressive about whether you can get to a society that is truly abundant, what conservatives or naysayers would just call the utopia kind of thing, and like we describe this utopia as kind of a post-scarcity society. But the thing that was the most interesting about the story that the AI had constructed was the fact that like it wasn't going into like the details of what post-scarcity society would be and how wonderful it would be. It was actually doing the opposite of that. It was going straight for what would be the hardest things to deal with in a post-scarcity society, which is not naturally where my brain goes when I think about like how wonderful a post-scarcity world would be. It went straight for the problems.
But I told it to do that.
That was great. And it mapped it out nicely. It was like, people are going to struggle with this. Conceptually, they're going to struggle with this idea that they used to have to exist in this fashion, and now they've got everything, and like, what the hell are they going to do with themselves?
So
I loved that. I was
able to fill in the gaps in my vision, but I sort of framed it in a way of how people are going to react when they've got all this power. Like what are they going to do with their lives? You can ask these questions and ask it to build a story around these questions and be like, oh wow.
No, I'll do that. It's a good suggestion. I will put the Discord server invite in the description.
Dude, I'll fill it up with stories all day.
And we'll get a channel going, and people like the viewers and the listeners can go and check it out for themselves. This stuff it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. Yeah.
Well, I thought we've had a pretty good discussion today. And of course, last segment, as always, what's that synthwave art?
Yeah, what is that synthwave art?
So amazingly cool robot. I'm in love with this photo.
So boys,
I don't even want to have a crack at
what
is this, like Robo Spider-Man or something?
So who wants to have a crack at it?
Yeah, look, I I don't know. I've been struggling with this one, and I just can't get over the whole three-legged
I love
creature.
the sneakers as well.
Yeah.
The sneakers.
Okay, so it's AI battling with the coercive laws of competition and change.
Yeah, right.
Wow. Now
So
I'm afraid of it.
So yeah, it's created some sort of gorilla slash Tron thing.
Thing with three legs, and the third leg is squashing something. It looks like it's killed something on the floor.
Yeah, is it a bug under its foot or something? It's
Yeah.
squashing coercive laws.
But yeah, like it's got some sort of Tron battle suit, which is
But it's eerie.
crazy.
It's eerie. It's very eerie. It's not a nice picture. This one, I don't find. Yeah, it's got a.
I loved it. Those.
No, it looks great. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but like it gives me a feeling of competition. I guess, yeah, vicious competition.
Okay, and with
But I've really enjoyed this conversation, guys. Thanks heaps for indulging me on it. Yeah,
no, and of course, thank you, Kareem, for joining us again today. And remember, everyone, to keep thinking and keep learning. And to sign us off, I'll give it to you, Mr.
Thank you very much, 4AS and Kareem, our #1 AI explorer. Thanks for your time. And to all of you out there, please join the Discord server. It's a great place for a chat, and we've got some interesting stuff there that we've been talking about a lot through this episode specifically. And yeah, like, subscribe, comment. Just make sure you subscribe so you can get access to more of this stuff. You get the notifications. And until next time, please remember, I am, you are, we are a MysterE.